idea of Zionism was floated. So it was basically started by Theodor Herzl, who wrote a book called Der Judenstaat in 1896. So that is where they start propagating the idea of Zionism, where they say that there is this hill called Zion in Jerusalem, which is the home of all the Jews. So let's go back there. And the reason behind them wanting a land is understandable, because they have been a persecuted community in different parts of the world. So wherever the Jews settled, they have faced issues, and that is the reason they want a place they can call as their own. But there was a problem, that it was already inhabited by the Palestinians. But were the Israel people or the Zionists ready to accept that or cohabit with the Palestinians? No, they wanted it all for themselves, and that is where this starts. So in around 1890s, we have a mayor called Yusuf Dia, who is of course related to the author, and that is where the whole story starts in the book. The author is personally related to 2 to 3 people when it comes to the book and the characters that he has mentioned, because in Palestine it has been of course few powerful families have been in power, and that is how they've been, and the descendants also have been mayors, and they've been in UN, and it has gone on like that. So it starts with Yusuf Dia, who was the mayor of Jerusalem, and he has once he read the book by Theodor Herzl, he has this idea of what is going to happen, what are they planning to do. He foresees the issue and writes a letter directly to Herzl. He addresses the issue. He says that he requests them not to attack Palestinians. In fact, that is the whole idea. And what happens is, it is a very peace inviting letter where he actually says, we are your cousins. We are cousins because we have the same forefather as per the Bible and the stories. They have this common forefather called Abraham. So we are basically cousins. So let's not fight each other. So in fact, his line verbatim would be, Zionism in principle was natural, beautiful and just. And he says that they are not ready to contest the rights of the Jews, because they say, my God, it is historically your country. This is one line that is constantly being used by the Israel people, because they feel that, okay, that is my country. But the entire context says that it is our country because we are cousins in some manner. Maybe that if the Zionists had accepted that right from the beginning, we wouldn't be here, is what the whole thing is about. And then Herzl goes on to write a reply where he addresses all these points. He accepts certain things and he does not accept certain things. But then he goes on to answer a question which was not even asked in the letter. He says, in allowing immigration to a number of Jews, bringing their intelligence, financial acumen and means of enterprise to the country, no one can doubt that the well-being of the entire country would be the happy result. And he also goes on to say, in the existence of the non-Jewish population in Palestine, who could think of sending them away? Till then, there is no question of Palestinians being sent away. And all of a sudden, he brings that into the letter, clearly showing that that is the main intention itself. So they want the land and they want it all for themselves. And it starts as early as 1896 and not on October 7th. Then it is the British colony. So as always, Britain plays a huge role. It has colonized a lot of countries, and of course Palestine was also under their control. What happens is, Israel or the Zionists as such, they are very shrewd. They are very shrewd, and they have this plan, a clear plan of what is to be done in the next 100 years, and they start working for it right from 1890s basically. So they start resourcing everything that's required. They collect the political affiliations that would be needed, and at the same time the Palestinians are not even aware of what's happening around them. So by 1890s, 1900s, there is a clear idea of Israel. They've got a proper channel to fund their resources. So there is one point where they have this Jewish National Fund. By 1930s, they have 13 billion or 13 million US dollars or something, whereas Palestinians have nothing. They have no idea of what's happening. So this political unawareness basically has cost a lot for the Palestinians. So in 1901, basically it was an Ottoman Empire. All the Arab states were being governed. Everything was all good. And then slowly they start bringing in the political leaders of Britain. Basically, they were very empathetic towards the Zionist idea, and so they start supporting the cause. And in 1901, they write a charter for the Jewish Ottoman Land Company, where there's clear clause stating that removal of inhabitants of Palestine to other provinces and territories of the Ottoman Empire, basically sending them away to the other Arab countries. So that is where it starts. And then we have the colonizer mindset. The British people constantly support the Israel's idea, and they start basically suppressing the Palestinians. And it has been the same pattern, be it India, North America, South Africa, Australia, Algeria. They follow the same pattern in Palestine as well. And the Jewish slogan, or the slogan of the Zionists, is basically a land without a people for a people without a land. But again, they are not ready to address that the land already has people in it, the Palestinians. They are very clear right from the beginning to not give the historic connection to the Palestinians to their land. So right from the beginning, there is an erasure of history, which is the most important tool for any community to lose its connection to their own land. So that is being done right from 1901. So then the main thing starts. So the book basically talks about 6 declarations of war, because the book was released before what is happening so now. So basically this would be the 7th one. So the first 6 is what the book covers. So the first thing starts from 1917 to 1939. So the first declaration of war starts with the Balfour Declaration by the Britain government. They lay out different clauses and all that, but basically the whole declaration is about how Zionists will have the land, the Jewish people will have the land, and it will not be the land of the Palestinians. So this starts the immigration of Jews in large number into Palestine. So in 1922, we have the League of Nations, currently we call it the United Nations, and they form a mandate for Palestine. And again in that, they adapt the Balfour Declaration and amplified other clauses as well. In the third para of the mandate, we clearly have only Jewish people have the historic connection to Palestine. So the erasure is very deliberately brought into a legal document, and they've done it. And then there's no mention of the Palestinians at all in the subsequent 28 clauses as well. So clearly there is not just erasure, they are not even trying to give them an identification as such. So in Article 4, they bring in a quasi-governmental status to Israel, and then they also give the power to facilitate Jewish immigration. So all this is even before the Nazi rule or before the Jews were persecuted in Germany. So it is not against they were the victims and that they were coming, nothing like that. And then in Article 7, they clearly state that Jews should get citizenship in Palestine, which was totally not given to the Palestinians themselves. So in 1917, once they get this idea, they have this legal authority now, then the immigration starts. So from 1917 to 1926, the population of Jews grows from 6% to 18%. But then there is a global depression and all, and then they don't migrate. They're very clever. They don't migrate then on. Then again, the problem starts. 1933, Hitler rises to power. We have the Nazi regime. Now they're really persecuted. Of course, yes, what they went through, the Holocaust, is not something anybody is going to accept or condone basically, because what happened was inhumane. But the fact that they as a community are ready to do the same thing to another community is what should be looked at, is what is important. So in 1933, once the Nazi power comes, and then in 1935, we have around 60,000 Jews migrating into Palestine. So the population keeps increasing, and that is becoming a major reason for the suppression that the Palestinians face today. So they have several commissions have been implemented, be it the Pillay Commission or then the Churchill Commission. Everybody tries giving some sort of a solution to the issue, but nothing is in favor of the Palestinians as such. So in 1937, what happens is there is an armed revolt from the side of the Palestinians, but they are not aware of the might of the Israelis at that point itself, because they have the political support from British government. The British government also gives them arms and training for the fight, and they are ready. They are equipped by from 1937. Whatever be the revolt, Israel wins, and Israel wins with a thumping majority basically. It's not just just like that, or there is just one backlash they face, but even then they're ready to go on. They have a large troop to fight with. That is what is happening. So from 1937, what the British government does, it starts punishing the people who are involved in the revolt. So there are, this is basically the rule book of any fascist government. They start with summary trial, no proper trial. In just one go you find that okay, this person is, is guilty, and then you go on to punish him. And since the militant groups attacked their vehicles or convoys, they started tying the Palestinian individuals to the vehicles so that they won't be attacked. Another scene or image that I think a lot of people can connect to, because this happens everywhere. And then the most important thing is the houses of the militants were demolished. Again, a parallel that we can identify easily, because this happens whenever there is an opposition to a government that is ruling. And then there is detention without trial. So the basic rule book of fascists is what we see right from 1937. So then this is what has happened in Ireland as well, and that is why Ireland is a very strong supporter of Palestinians, because they know what they have faced at the hands of the British and others. So they want to support the Palestinian cause. And then comes Mayor Dr. Hussein Khalidi, who is the uncle of the author. So that is where his line starts, and he starts researching into it and all that. So he has a lot of personal materials that he has relied this book on, his uncle's memoirs, the previous mayor's memoirs, and of course he has gone through and researched a lot of things. His father was in the UN, so he has valid resources, and he has quoted all of them throughout the books. So none of it is just personal lived experiences or trying to gain sympathy towards the Palestinians. There are places, or in fact in numerous places, he has in fact pointed his finger at the Palestinian leaders for the state they are in. He has constantly said that had they been a bit more aware, had they been a bit more proactive, Palestine state would be much different than what it is at present. So then we go on to have the British prime ministers who are constantly supporters of the Zionist cause, be it Churchill or his successors. They've all been ardent Zionist supporters, so there is no support in general for the Palestinians. Then they move on to the second war in 1947 to 48, which is very popularly called as Nakba, because a lot of Palestinians were displaced from their homes. So it is again not something that happened in 1947. So from 1937 there is a lot of retaliation from the Palestinians. They, not in a huge number, but small militant groups trying to fight against the mighty Israel government. So that is what they've been doing. And in 1947, by 1947, despite UN forming a special commission on Palestine, they're saying that okay, let's go to a two-state solution, let's partition the thing. We'll give 56% to Israel. A country that had a majority of the Palestinian people was clearly partitioned, and they gave all the rights to it. It was recommended that 56% can be given to Israelis. So then people are not ready. Israel was declared as a state somewhere in 1948 in May 15, if I am not wrong. But almost a year before that, they start attacking the people there. They know this is coming. They know this is coming. They know they are going to be recognized. So they start attacking. So from 1947, October, September, the Nakba starts. Clusters of people are displaced. They are sent to different parts of the world. So what happens is they go to Saudi, Lebanon and Iraq and all the neighboring Arab countries. They are again taken in as refugees. In most countries they don't have citizenship, or some countries they give them the right to get educated, but this is the maximum that they get. Another reason for the Palestinian cause not getting the support that it deserves is again because of the non-cooperation, or there is a common misunderstanding among the Arab countries. Right from the beginning, there is a constant civil war threat inside these countries, so they are not ready to support the Palestinian cause as well. For them, it is to, the first priority is to safeguard themselves, their country, and maybe then look at the Palestinian cause. I don't think it has worked out much, because Lebanon is still being bombed, Syria is being bombed, everywhere they are facing the Israel's might basically. So in 1947 to 48, there is a huge Nakba. We have, that is the image that they still keep posting, because they constantly connect that with what's happening now, because they are being displaced in huge numbers. And almost 80% of the Arab population was uprooted from Gaza, mainly Gaza. That is where they are uprooted, and they are made to go live in a very small place, which is what we call the Gaza Strip. And then in 1940s, Britain realizes that if they keep supporting Israel, somewhere they are going to lose, because Israel is getting mightier than UK. So what they do is they kind of withdraw their support. They're trying to do it, but unfortunately they're just too involved and they're unable to do it as well. That is when they have this 1950s, there are constant militant attacks, and then the Suez War starts against Egypt, because Israel just needs to fight with somebody and they pick Egypt next because they are supporting the Palestinian cause. So this was fought by Israel in alliance with France and Britain. So who supports Egypt is US and Russia. Very unconventional probably support, because US is now supporting Israel, but that is where this starts. And more than Egypt, the refugees in Gaza Strip are the most affected. So that is when Britain realizes, okay, with them in power, we are going to get affected, so let's take a back seat. And they do take a back seat. That's when Israel gets the support of US. They understand that, okay, UK's power is going to decline now, considering that India got its independence. A lot of countries get independence in the 1940s. So Israel realizes that, okay, UK is not the power anymore. They very clearly see that US is going to be the next huge thing. They start getting support from the US government, which the Palestinians never realize until the very end. So even till the 1980s to 2000s, they still keep believing that US will in some way help them or support them. But Israel, very proactive. They've started getting their support, collecting funds, bringing all their powerful people into the powerful position. That is what they've been doing. And then in 1967, they wage a major war. And this is the first time a ceasefire is called. The UN is there, it is trying to be proactive and all that. So there's this incident in the book I think everybody has to read, because the author's father is in the UN, he's there, and the author is also watching the proceedings happening at the UN. So the ceasefire is called and Israel is not obeying the ceasefire, or is not following. They just need 2 hours to enter Syria. And then US says, see, they're not complying, give us 2 hours to recoup and get back. Let's give them 2 hours to comply. And it's basically a delayed tactic so that they can go in. And the author clearly states that his father tells him that they're just delaying it. They just want people to go in and attack. And the major war causes a lot of wreck in Israel, in Gaza, and then in Egypt as well. It keeps, every time they lose a lot of manpower, they are not ready to face the might of the army that Israel has. So it's not just manpower, they face financial backlash, they have economical issues that they cannot keep rebounding from. Basically that's where it has they've been struggling continuously, because every war puts them at a back seat. But then US constantly supports Israel, and in 1969 we have Golda Meir become the Prime Minister of Israel, and she clearly states this, there's no such thing as Palestinians. We have seen a lot of people, lot of very positive views about Golda Meir being a woman Prime Minister and all that. But yes, maybe if you want to look at the grit and all that, yes, I think that is a common trait of all the Israelis or the Zionists, because that is what has got them here. But there is a side that they were ready to persecute a community because they wanted a land. There is this constant thought among the fascists that a land is separate from the people. And whenever I look at the Twitter pages of Gaza people at present, they keep stating that whenever you're bombing the most important places, their agricultural land, they keep saying the indigenous people won't do that, which is important. You will not hurt your own place, you will not affect your own agricultural land, you will never destroy your land. You will do that to a land that you want to occupy. That is what they keep saying, and I think the historical events just corroborate what they are trying to say. So, but then in 1970, the other Arab countries realized that it's no use fighting with Israel. So in 1970, Egypt and Jordan, they enter into a peace treaty to save themselves. So they take a back seat. But in 1960s, what happens is, the moment Palestinians realize that the other Arab countries are not going to support them, they form the other militant organization. So basically the resurrection of Palestinians start in 1967. That's when Yasser Arafat comes into scene. There are two different militant groups that gain momentum. One would be the Marxist PFLP, which has the leftist ideology. They want to follow the Marxist ideology. And then there is Fatah, which was Arafat's. For them, it is the Islamic thing that has to rule. They do not have the leftist leaning and all that. For them, their people is their priority. To save them, they should enter into armed war basically. They are ready for that. They try for that. Again, they fail, that is a different issue, but they try for that. So in 1964, the other 6 Arab countries, they formed the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and the Marxist PFLP is not very proactive in that, but Yasser Arafat comes into that and he heads that at one point of time. In 1974, he in fact represents the PLO in the UN General Assembly to talk about the Palestinian cause, which actually gains momentum, and he is able to garner support to a particular point. But then in 1968, Israel again wages a war against Jordan. So for them, they keep planning a war. They plan a war, they wait for a provocation, and then they enter into it. The provocation is normally provided by the militants who try organizing something small scale, like turning off the water pipes. There is one incident where the Fatah people are actually doing it. They are disrupting the water flow into Israel. So in return, they wage a war. So every small provocation, they're just waiting for it with all the arms and everything ready, and they keep going into a war with the people of Palestine. So in throughout this history, we can see there are certain US presidents who actually tried bringing in peace. Maybe it was to a very small extent, but we have Jimmy Carter and John F. Kennedy basically. They are trying to do something, maybe not at a huge level, but a very small level, to at least stop the war or bring in some kind of relief to the Palestinians. Nothing works out, because by then, though the president is somebody who wants peace, everybody around them is a strong supporter of the Zionists, because there is this constant sympathy that has been gained during the Holocaust. They keep saying that we are the persecuted community, we are the persecuted. We still have TikTok videos of people still crying in their 5-star hotel kind of rooms. They cry that I feel sad for the Israel people. So yes, so that still happens, and they've clearly fixed the narrative. You will see more narratives coming in the next 2 to 3 declarations. So this is the 3rd declaration of war from 1960s, and then we have the 4th declaration in 1982, where they go into aerial bombardment of Lebanon. Very small provocation, they go into aerial war, and they have used around 1,20,000 troops for the war, which is not even 1% or 2% of it is what all the Arab nations together would have had. The support comes from the US obviously, and we can keep thinking, why is the US doing it, or how are they able to do it, and why is there a constant need for a provocation? And the reason would be the US has this Arms Supply Act, which was drafted in 1976, and it states that US can give arms supply to a country that is fighting for its power, and you can use it only if there is a self-defense cause. So that's why you always have a self-defense cause, be it on October 7th or any war before that they've tried after the 1976 Act. They always have this self-defense. Something has happened, someone has provoked, but yes, they use this clause very effectively. And the militant groups, again, they are unaware of what is happening, that every small thing they do is actually being blown out of proportion. The only time they are able to get minimum of support is during the 1982 and 1987 wars, because that's when the news starts coming out. Newspapers were banned initially, and then we start getting a few pictures of children with no arms. All this starts coming out, and the Palestinian cause gains sympathy in the 1982 and 1987 to 1995. This is the period that they are able to gain a bit of sympathy. And then again, they lose that because of Hamas. Once they come in, they start using a lot of suicide bombings, and a lot of civilians are attacked, and that is when they start losing the support that they gained over a 15 to 20 year period. But during the 15 to 20 year, again, there has been a Lebanon war in 1982, where 19,000 Palestinians and Lebanese people were killed. Though Arafat and other people in the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, were prepared, it was not sufficient to handle the might of the Israel army. In fact, there is a New York Times reporter, Thomas Friedman, who has actually written a line saying indiscriminate bombing by the Israelis, which was removed by the editor. And if you can see, what he means by indiscriminate is that Israel was ready to bomb areas that they were not supposed to, areas where the press people were living, which is something that we still see, because in the last 2 months they've killed 92 press people in Gaza. So attacking press or something is again a common thing that you would see right from the beginning in any war that Israel was involved. The reason being, truth should not come out, or what is happening, their violations of the human rights should not come out. So this is something that they've been consistently doing. And there has been a cartoon in one of the Israel newspapers stating that there are 7,000 child terrorists, basically. Again, the justification for killing children, something that is happening again. We see that children are being targeted, and most of the houses in the refugee camps, again a place where they should not be bombing, it is being bombed, especially knowing that there are press people in it, there are reporters in it, there are children in it. So this is a common trait that you see again from 1980s. It comes to light, basically. The number of people who are killed increases manifold right from 1982, because they get more ammunition, they have aerial troops, they have land troops, they have tanks in their power, and against them we have Palestinian children throwing stones. So again, how do you spin this narrative? They go on to take the David versus Goliath story. They say that with the stone they'll attack us, and the fact is that they are still able to gain support for that narrative, while you can see that a tank is nothing, they're not going to do anything to, how would that happen? But yes, they are able to gain sympathy from with every narrative that they set. So in 1982 this happens, and the US gives a support of $1.4 billion both in 1981 and 82, a support that even now Palestinians cannot get from any of the countries. And then this is when they get the support, because in 2 days around 1,300 people get killed in the war, and that is when the cartoon also gets published. So everything acts against their propaganda for the very first time, and they gain that bit of sympathy. So that's when US comes into peace talks. They say that we'll protect the camps. They ask the PLO to take a step back so that we can protect the camps. They do not do that. A lot of refugee camps get attacked, and that is why around 19,000 people get killed in that one war. Then after 5 years, they wait for them to react. Something happens. In 1987, the Palestinian Liberation Organization is weakened, because Arafat, after a point, he becomes the sole power, and he is not very used to taking criticisms, is what the author states. He clearly states that had Arafat listened to his critics, had he listened to the educated people of Palestine who were aware of the plans of Israel or the global mileage that Israel has, the maybe this much casualties could have been avoided, is what they say. But then it does not happen. So in 1987 to 1995, that is when this whole image of the Palestinian boy throwing a stone at the tank comes out, and then there is a lot of suicide bombing and all that. So they lose support from the Gulf countries itself. So Syria, Lebanon and Jordan enter into separate peace talks with Israel, again to save themselves. So in 1992, Palestinian interim self-governing authorities formed by certain people of Palestine, trying to bring in some kind of peace. They realize that it's no use fighting against the might of Israelis. Let's go into the two-state solution. Maybe even if they take the majority of the land, there would be a small part of the land where they can actually be safe. But nothing goes through, because Israel is not ready to give even a small portion of the land. They want the land to themselves, and every peace talk fails because this side is not ready. So in the interim agreement, they decide that there are 3 areas that are very badly affected, which would be A, B and C. C is the biggest land with 60% of people living, and Israel takes complete control of it. A has 18% of people and land, and then Palestine takes full control of it. And then there's B, which is 22%, where the lives are okay, the Palestine can take control, but security comes under the control of Israel, which is 82% of the land, of the disputed land, goes into the control of Israel. So in 1987 to ABC is like they go on to the disputed land in West Bank and Gaza. So in West Bank and Gaza, there are draconian restrictions that the people face there. So they enter into the peace talk. So what happens is they divide the land into three parts. A, with 18% land and people, Palestine gets control of it. B, which is 22%, the security comes under the control of Israel, but the other things Palestine people can take care. C has 60% of the land and people, which goes into the control of Israel. So again, by 1995, they literally lose 82% of the disputed land, which comes in West Bank and Gaza, both of which are being bombed right now. So the last war, the last declaration of war is in 2000 to 2014. This is when Hamas comes into the scene. They are formed in 1987 and they slowly rise in power. So by 2000, they are ready for militant attacks and they start the suicide bombing. So this again brings the sympathy of Israel people into scene, and they gain sympathy because, they gain sympathy because of the suicide bombings that they face at the hands of Hamas. So this Hamas again is a retaliation because of the restrictions that they face. So by 2006, Hamas also starts contesting in elections along with the Palestinian Authority. So they are ready to face elections, they are ready to form a government for their people, but certain things that they do is not okay with the world as such. The world, which is right now silent, seeing what is happening to the Palestinian people, is not ready to see that in retaliation they use suicide bombings. So what happens is, but Israel understands that Hamas is going to be a big threat. So when Hamas is ready to join the Palestinian Authority, which is in the election and all that, Israel vetoes that they should not join, and US says that Hamas has to be boycotted. So Hamas is not brought into the scene right from the beginning, probably because they realize that of all the militant organizations they face so far, Hamas is probably the comparatively dangerous militant organization. So in 2018, Hamas is considered as terrorists. So no funding or no kind of support is available to people the Hamas group. And by then they lose the control they had over Gaza Strip. So by 2018, Gaza Strip becomes an open air prison, which is what is still the current status. So lot of people in Gaza and West Bank are still in poverty because there is a constant war that is being waged against them and there is no support anywhere. In July to August 2014, there was a 51 days war, and where 6,000 airstrikes were conducted over West Bank and Gaza. 50,000 artillery shells were used using tanks and other by Navy, and then they also had land attacks. So in total, 21 kilotons of explosives were used by Israel against Gaza and West Bank and other small areas, just because they said Hamas is there and we want to attack them. A ceasefire was called after all this happened, and yes, there was a ceasefire which was accepted. So in 2017, of course, before that, when Obama becomes the president, there is a small hope and all that, but nothing can be done because by then Israel is a power that no one can stop at the moment. So in 2017, after 1917 is where they get the first recognition. So after 100 years in 2017, Trump recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. So basically Israel is a state now, they have a capital, whereas Palestinians do not have a home to reside. So that is the 100 years war. So according to the author, it is not something that started in October 7th. It started 100 years back, as early as 1890s when the idea was formed, and the legal protection came in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration. Every other commission has only acted in favor of Israel, and they've given pieces of land to Israel in small proportions, but yes, the deed is done. Now we see US stating that civilians are being killed and all that. That is what has been happening for the past 100 years according to the book. The sources are clearly mentioned, and the author also states when they were caught in the war in Lebanon in by 1980s, that war in Lebanon is a civil war basically. Another huge reason for the Palestinian cause failing is the constant civil disruptions they face within their countries, be it Lebanon, be it Iraq, be it Egypt. They constantly have civil disruptions inside their country, so they're not able to garner the support or act together basically. So they constantly fail because there's no unity. The constant Arab unity that we talk about is not possible. And also with respect to all the Arab countries with all the financial capacity they have, they cannot enter into a war because of their geography, which is basically a desert. They cannot take cover. So that is why Israel conducts airstrikes more than land attacks, because they know that they cannot have any place to take cover. And that is why they keep saying that Hamas has built a tunnel under hospitals so that they can conduct an airstrike on hospitals. So everything has been going against the Palestinians and the Arab people for that matter, except for Saudi Arabia that has taken some kind of effort. They've got a promise from Roosevelt to not attack the Palestinians and all that, but then Roosevelt dies and the next person is not ready to honor that promise. So constantly they've been betrayed by different world governments, including the UN, which is now not ready to bring in a ceasefire. So even a ceasefire is not something that might stop the Israelis, because they have their own history of violating a ceasefire, taking some kind of distraction or delay tactics that have been used by the Israelis. So the 100 years war is what is culminated into the attack by the Hamas, and what Israel is facing, Israel is doing at present in the name of retaliation is not just retaliation but a planned thing as per their own leader, Mr. Hessel, who has clearly stated that we are not planning to send you guys away, which is what they've been doing for the past 100 years. So this again, it is important to understand that it is not just the world that has failed Gaza or the people of Palestine. It has also been their own leaders, because they have not been ready to learn from their mistakes, regroup, get better. Every time they try, it is almost a militant attack. At times they'll have to they've tried diplomatic route when it should not have been done. They've tried the militant route when that should not have been done. Understanding the might of your opponent is very important, which is something they've constantly failed to do, is what the author keeps saying throughout the book. He keeps saying this should not have been done at this point, this should not have been done at this point. At some point they should have listened to these people from the UN who are supporters of the Palestinian cause. This has not happened at all. So many factors have contributed to the state of Palestine being destroyed by a war now, and for 100 years they've been facing this and they continue to face this. So it is not just about understanding their history, but also understanding that anytime you consider a land more important than the people in the land, you will be facing retaliation, and they might fail, they might get killed, but their cause is going to stand for at some point of time. Now we see that the world in general is, at least to an extent, boycotting the sponsors, calling out people who are constantly supporting the Israel government and all that. Continuously doing that might bring a small level of peace and harmony for the people of Palestine, and maybe decrease the number of people who get killed. So recently there was this writer who was martyred, Rifat, and he wrote a poem, if I must die, you must live to tell my story. And I think that is what all of us should do, live to tell their story, the war they faced for the 100 years and not just for the past 2 months. And no, we can condemn what happened on October 7th by Hamas, but that does not condone what Israel has been doing for the past 100 years. Sure.
Undoubtedly, it's one of the best presentations we have ever seen on a very important topic. We have read and reread and heard many times this story. I want to ask you, we have here eminent professor from the Department of Political Science from Presidency College, Dr. Muthukumar is also there. I also would request him to share his thoughts on this. I think the British created two big problems at the time when they. Could you please for some time? Yeah, thank you. At the time of independence, not only to the Palestinians but also to India, they created a mess with Pakistan. We should boldly accept the fact. This is very, very sad. I heard this story when I was a child. Many of us heard this Arab and the camel. But really, in the last 100 years or so, we really see where what's exactly happening. The the Arab was now pushed out, and the camel got inside this. I don't know when this story was written whether Palestine and Israel was kept in mind. It's so sad that when immediately after the Second World War, the entire world was very empathetic towards Israelis, the Jews in particular, because of, as you rightly said, the Holocaust and other problems. But they actually used that as an opportunity to grab as much as possible from this place. The other day, one of my friend was saying that now we have to reread Hitler. Why one man was against such a big, people? But I understand Hitler also has said somewhere that the world will realize one day what I said. Today, what exactly is happening, and their narratives are excellent. As you rightly pointed out, whatever they comes out and say, the world believes. Is it because that they control the entire media everywhere? As you rightly said, the Thomas Friedman, one of the very well distinguished economist. I always read this very famous book, End of Poverty, by Thomas Friedman. See, when people like him, his captions were removed, that means they are capable of influencing so well. So it's very sad, but I leave it here because I request Dr. to come and share his thoughts on, because I know her by the time she born, very little girl, but today she has grown not only in stature also. The kind of presentation was awesome actually. I've seen her earlier doing it in our book club, but today it's fantastic, flawless and beautiful thing. The only sad part of it, you have to take such a very, very disturbing one as your review here. But that's very important. We have to, understand and see what exactly is happening. The world is today. We are competing one side with artificial intelligence. Human being have to compete with them. The other side, we are still in the name of religion and God fighting each other and killing others mercilessly. So it's very, very sad. I request our distinguished professor, head of the Department of Political Science, to come and share his thoughts and also about the review what our girl has done today. Thank you. Would you like to respond to whatever I said? Yes. Thank you. Do you agree that yes, the media is completely owned by them and control them? That's why the narratives are. Yeah, please, sir. Thank you.
Yes, because the author also constantly points out places where their narratives were propagated in such a way that the world, constantly keeps sympathizing with the Israelis. Despite the fact that they have been the oppressors for the past 100 years, I understand that the Holocaust still remains in all our minds. The images are horrible. We remember that. You can feel sad for them, I understand, but there's this constant question that keeps going on in my mind. How can somebody who went through that keep doing that same thing or something worse to another community? So that is the only question. That is the reason we also see that a lot of Jewish people are actually against what Israel is doing now. We cannot simply club all of them together as well. We've seen worldwide protests where a lot of Jewish people have condemned what Israel is doing now, because most of them keep saying that this is not what my grandfather escaped for. They don't want the same thing to be done to another group of people. So to all, they call them, the Zionists have never started calling them as anti-Semitic, considering, despite the fact that they have also gone through the same thing. Whoever talks against them are now considered anti-Semitic and all that. So I think it's important to understand that it's not just you will have to give it to the Jews who've stood against Israel's might. There are protests going on in Tel Aviv itself against their president. So all things should be taken into account, and yes, the media plays a huge role in it, and that is why even now we have see the New York Times and all that giving captions stating in 18,000 people found dead in Gaza. They did not commit suicide to be dead in Gaza. They are not ready to mention that their own reporters have been killed by Israel airstrike. They say that we are sorry that we have lost one of our reporters. How they did not get lost in some fair that is happening. They've been killed. They're targeted, in fact. So the fact that the media houses are not ready to acknowledge what is happening itself is a grave mistake, because it's their duty to bring out the truth and not be an accomplice to basically hiding what's happening and in fact setting the wrong narrative. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks. It's really a wonderful presentation by you, and I should thank Joyce because she was calling me for so many times and I could not make it. And today I should be thankful to her for coming, and the presentation went on so well, and I didn't expect that. I just thought she's just a student, and now I feel that I'm confused whether she is from Palestine. Because Mozhi firstly she had presented it as from victim point also, and actually the entire Palestinian issue we need to understand from international relations and international politics since ages, and maybe from First World War or Second World War, even before that, a lot of crucifixions war had happened. And two important things had happened in my life personally when I met when I watched this Omar Mukhtar. This explains how it is difficult to fight a war in desert with armed people, with the people who have tanks and other things. They fight simply with arms. The other opponent side, they have everything. So the case with Palestinians also. And world over, all the right-wing groups gives supports economically, financially, and armed training, everything were given to Israelis, but not for Palestinians. It is very mystery for me, like, to understand how Palestinians were left out by their own democratic people, like. So geographically, like they live in the same place, but actually because of the religious differences, they were left out. And I was wondering, like, whether maybe try to understand more international relations, like whether any business or trade, anything were there inside, why they were left out, like. But it's more the causes. But there are a lot of solutions also are coming up. But somehow, as she said, they were found in standing in a place they are not supposed to. Like the other day I was watching Hillary Clinton was speaking. She said there was an opportunity when Yasser Arafat was called and the state was about to be given for Palestine, but somehow it didn't come out. And the very difficult question is in international relations, what we find is from statelessness to state, if any state is trying to create, that creates a huge problem, especially for the nations which is belligerent and they have their own agenda in there. Why they support it? Because especially we are in international relations, we find that especially US want to have a hold in Middle East, and the best place for them is anytime they'll get a support is Israel. They cannot rely on any other state there, though they are supporting for I mean mutually they have trade and business links, but they can depend only on Israel. In case of any war or any issue, any problem comes up, they can depend only on them, Israel. That is why they have a mutual support. For that, I always tell my students, though I openly say that one of the first and foremost terrorists in the world are US for bombarding Japan, not anybody else, but they blame every other nation as a terrorist organizations. So breeding terrorist organizations including Pakistan, India, anywhere they blame it. But I always tell my students this is what happening. But seeing her presentation, I find one thing, like after seeing this Gaddafi Omar Mukhtar movie, I don't know whether how many of you have seen it. I think you should see that movie, and you will cry while watching that movie. And when Omar Mukhtar falls, yes, when he falls from the horse, I was almost in tears when I was watching in Sri Fort Auditorium in New Delhi, and that had made me an understanding how it's difficult to fight a war in desert by the other people who was really fighting for their rights. This is the another important what I have had is I have had an opportunity to meet an Israeli army officer, maybe some 15-20 years back. I was traveling from Delhi to Chennai. He was traveling with me, and I didn't know that I thought that he was any other foreigner coming with us. And well, one full day I have. We have no traveling in Tamil Nadu Express. So I was talking to him. Then I found that is Israel means like Israel army officer. So then I had a conversation with him. I said, and the training for them was unimaginable, and the tenacity of the training was merciless. So he says, no, it's our right, and we have to. This is not for us, for our future. For the land is very important for us. And where will we go? And this is a place we have found out, and we have to go for it, and no choice for us. And they may have a choice, but we have no choice. They can live, he says, they can live anywhere else around, but we have no place, nobody will accept us. So we have to go do it. Thing is, though we ideologically we call it as right wing thoughts, right ideologies, but their ideas, plans, programs, everything highly intertwined. They had a huge vision on how to go about it. This is what they had planned it. They have created a state also for themselves. But in the process, Palestinians missed a lot of opportunities. And internationally, this is what I found is they have missed a lot of opportunities. If they had agreed, even if they have with certain losses of land or anything like that, now they will have a right to fight back, and they will have the other nations also will be coming support without any issues for themselves. So since they don't have any kind of sovereign rights over them, over the state, then the issue leads to so many other factors in international politics. So the belligerent attitude in ideological things are persecuted, and going to war without anything is really. Hamas, no, like we may call it as a terrorist organization, but they also were not equipped with adequate arms as they could fight Israelis, because they are war veterans. They fought with Egypt and won against all the states they have fought with. If they are defeated at least with one, they will have some place where they can intrude into it. They cannot, and because Britain was supporting, America was supporting, even Russia was supporting sometime. So the equations of international relations changes. Ideologically, America and Russia are different, but they are supporting. But the question is, we need to understand it in different perspectives, and long way to go. But as Sir has said now, and Hitler has to be read again and reread again. And I was thinking that whether it is justice or injustice, whether what he had done is justice or injustice. So these are the questions which comes to us, whether Holocaust is. We cannot justify anything, but still now when those people who are affected earlier now taking the same role of Hitler and acting upon it, and its total injustice. And when we read this book, Animal Farm, he says all are equal, but some are more equal than others. Like that, this philosophy, they take it up, and slowly, whatever the supporters also, slowly, like it may be right, this is not good. Another aspect what I find media is playing a very unjust role in bringing out, as she said, bringing out real facts, not only in Palestine but all over India. Now I feel like, I was talking to my friend who is a Reverend Father. He is living in US. We had a discussion last month. He said, not only in India we find the right wing ideologies emerging, world over now right wing ideologies are emerging. That is bringing a huge issues around the world, and where the victims are victimized, and that's justified world over. So I am happy that I am invited to talk about it, and I have expressed my own issues, and I am so happy that her presentation was so impressive, and I am impressed.
Will
Thank you.
Now justify your invitation for her to go to your college and others?
Please, I've invited her already. Yes, I.
Before the presentation.
Yeah. I invited her already. So all of you, I think, like we can have it in our college also. It is me who have to organize it. So anytime just tell me day before also.
Sure,
I'll organize. We have a wonderful place, a lot of students now, and presence is not like as it was before, and after 10 years it is different now. So a lot of students coming with the thirst of knowing things. So entirely different terrain now, and they reach different destinations. So I think we can have a small yeah, great, thank you, all the best, wonderful. Oh yeah, love.
So I don't know whether this I should get up, I guess, to be seen. Yeah. So wonderful presentation, Kuyil, Mori, because every fact that you stated, like there was a point when you didn't even look into the papers, like you were just presenting. So how much you have taken in, reading the book, how much of things you have read in, and how much you brought your own versions also. And here, most of the time, like I have a burning question within me as you kept presenting, So what is the solution? Because time 100 years of seeing all this, why it started, where it had started, and how many countries supported it, how much withdrew, and why this war, we always have this question, okay, what is the solution? Because after 100 years, now I'm wondering what will happen another 50 years, forget the other 100 years. Now at present, I can very much relate this to our own country also, because we have with our own Pakistan, with our own neighboring state, the same thing is happening, right? Because Palestine also is smarter, like you said, their cousins. Israel is so powerful and smarter. Of course, they were also smarter, but they failed to recognize, like they responded late. So my question here is, what is the solution? Because I know the author has very beautifully, represented what is happening with so much of intellectual. So what is the solution? Like as Professor said, he beautifully pointed out, if they at least agree to some sort of an identification of land or a ally, if they had a powerful ally, probably this much of lives would not have been lost. So my question is here, what is the solution? I know there's a lot of facts here. It's a burning question in my mind right now. And beautiful presentation. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuyil. So this topic about Palestine and Israel has always been like kind of a puzzle to me, because it's not a very straightforward, clear history. It has a lot of background. So the way you started it, and the narration was wonderful. It really gave me a clear view about what it's all about. To know about what's happening right now, you need to definitely know the history. So without talking about that, you can't understand what's going on and happening now. And so you did a wonderful thing there. And October 7th prompted me to go and see what it's really about. And I happened to see two documentaries. One is Born in Gaza, and then the other was Our World Is Not Ours. It's by a Danish Palestinian director. He talks about three generations of Palestinians, what they have undergone and what's the current situation and how the children are being affected because of it. And this particular documentary about children born in Gaza, they pick 10 kids from Palestine and then they show them, they interview them, and then they show their state, how it is, how much they have to work every day just to take bread to their house. There is a huge shortage of food. They don't have proper health care. The basics are not there. And this one particular boy that I saw from that movie was very touching, because he had to work day and night on the shore, carrying loads of fish on his pull cart, sell them and take it back to his owner. So his legs are all fully wounded from his walk and the travel and the weight he has to carry and all that. So when you relate that to what we are having here now, that simply shows how much we are privileged, and also shouldn't make us, lethargic. Please be aware, please be vigilant about what's happening around you. Sir clearly has mentioned about the rise of right wing. We know clearly what's happening here. Whatever you said is happening here. There's an MP who's right there from West Bengal. She was not even given a chance to talk her cause, and she was expelled from the parliament, which has happened to an MP. And who are we? We are nobody. So, the upholding of Article 370, anytime the union can come, divide our state, say this is a union territory and this is, so we are there, and then it's our duty to be aware, because we need to relate what we are seeing from the other countries, from what's happening around to what's in store for us. So we need to learn lessons from there, and I think I enjoyed your presence here and your wonderful discourse. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so that was a very good presentation. So thank you for bringing this book, so which was much needed now. So as so most of the population, so they started watching the Palestinian issue only after October 7. So they start from October 7, so which is not the right way, because they don't know the history. So when they learn the history, they have a different perspective towards the conflict that we are saying. So Palestine issue has always been close to art, so for the people who are standing with the oppressed ones. So my question is related to the changes that we are seeing now. So when it comes to the West imperialist countries, so it's not only the ruling class that stands with the Israel. So through the history, we have seen the people's sentiments were also with Israel. So there were many reasons for that. So one primary reason was their view towards the Arab people. But now we are seeing a change in that. So we are seeing a change between the ruling class and the people. So the people come out to the streets in stand of Palestine. So we have seen a clean distinction. So they are not ready to believe the perspective given by their government and also the media. So I would like to know your views on what caused this drastic change, and so what is the future of it? So what changes will it bring for the Palestinian people? Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Akka, thank you ma'am for your words, and thank you. So I'll start with his question and then I'll address the others. So first thing, the change is because of a lot of people gaining awareness about what's happening. So when I chose this book, it was in November if I'm not wrong. I said I'll do a review of this book, and I did not get this book anywhere because it was sold out, because a lot of people have started reading the history that is required to be read. And even in Kindle, there's this option where you can highlight and it shows how many people have already highlighted it. So a lot of important aspects were highlighted by around 300-400 people, and the recent, it also shows the recent trends highlighted recently by 100 something people. So it means that a lot of people want to know what is happening, and we have constantly been sure that Muslim people are terrorists. Starting from our movies to international level movies, they've always been shown as terrorists, and every video that comes out from Palestine shows their men in a completely different light, of a very caring nature. There is this video of a person sitting and playing with a child that's been brought to the hospital. Every doctor, every person who's rescuing them from the rubbles, there's a completely different shade that we are seeing to what we've been taught and brought up basically. So all those men we were shown as terrorists with the big beards and the skull caps, they are now there handling, feeding cats and all that. So when the moment you start taking care of children and you see that light, and of course when pets come in, a lot of rich people kind of get interested, because they're pets, they need I am a pet lover myself, and I'm involved in rescues and all that, but I know the kind of people who actually respond to it. When I ask money for the education of somebody, I don't get a lot of sponsors, but at the same time I ask them to, can we just do it for the cats? Yeah, we get that. So I know, so the moment that happens, there's a change in view. A lot of people are now reading, seeing a different shade of the people basically. So for the first time there is this question, okay, see, this is not what we've been shown, why were we shown that? And then they go back to read. You need a villain to show yourself as the hero, and it's been very easy to show them as the villains, and finally I think the world is seeing that they are not the villains that they were shown to be. And with respect to the book, there have been places, a lot of times there has been reference to India. The author feels that Palestine failed to get a government like the Indian government right after the colonization. That is one of the reasons that they were not able to survive all these things. So, and there's also a mention of a letter written by a British officer in India stating that the Indian Muslims are very empathetic towards the cause of the Palestinians. So, if you keep harassing them, we'll face backlash from India. And of course, the Indian government has constantly supported the Palestine. Even now, I think we are voting for the ceasefire and all that. Despite the things that we see here, India has been a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause. And when this started, we had the Indian National Congress pass a resolution supporting the Palestine, despite them being the opposite party here. They still have that cause, they have fight for that. So these are certain things that we can take, that of course we are privileged, and this small support does mean a lot, and every small support is what the future needs. So coming to your question, which is the main question, the future would be all of us talking about it. Like I said, they are all dying so that we will live to say the truth. So it's important to keep addressing that, and we see that the boycotting of huge brands has had an impact, starting from Zara to Starbucks. Of course, I love a Starbucks coffee, but no, I'm not going to drink that if this is what they are funding, if this is what my money is going to do. I will not be a part of it. Is a solid thing that we have to take, because the boycotting and all that has worked in other countries, but I don't see that here in India. Yeah, exactly. The children, the teenagers, so the 2K kids are actually much better there, because they are aware of what's happening. The boycotting has worked.
The problem is with the boomer uncles.
Yes, uncle. So we'll have to understand that in whatever way we can, we'll have to keep talking about the cause, stand with them, support them. And now even the US is changing its tone. They are saying that you are attacking the civilians. That's what they've been doing with the arms that you provided them all these years. But now they see the backlash from their own people, they want to change tones. So end of the day, it is always in the hands of the people. We've seen big nations being thrown, big democracies being turned, big kings facing a downfall. It's all in the hands of the people. So I think every voice counts. So talking for the people of Palestine, understanding what they're going through and amplifying that is the most important. So considering the fact that the Indian government actually stands with the Palestine cause, we actually have the liberty to talk about it. So let's make use of the liberty that we have. And there are a lot of social handles that you can follow, Mortaz, Plestia, and all these journalists there. You get a live update of what's happening. There's one Twitter ID called Mohammed Samiri, if I'm not wrong. So these are the IDs that I follow: Care for Gaza, what's happening in Gaza, Martyrs of Gaza. Follow them, learn what's happening every day, amplify it to every single level possible. That is what is bringing about the change in the narrative, and that is what is needed for them to have some kind of solution. At least a ceasefire for now needs a lot of people on ground, on social media, talking for them, supporting their cause.
One last question I'm curious to ask is, India is very clear about support,
Yeah.
but what about USSR and China? They're not very clear at it, right?
USSR,
And China, yeah.
USSR kind of supports Palestine, and they have been doing it probably because they are not okay with US taking the main stage. I'm not going into stating that their intentions are noble, because they have their own intentions. And also one of the reasons that USSR supported the Palestinian cause was because of the Marxist PLFE, because they thought, okay, maybe the communist ideology can be spread through Palestine. But once they realized that it could not happen, the author actually states that once they realized that that could not happen, there has been a backstep from the USSR support. Even now they've said that they support the Palestine, but I don't think they've come out openly in support. China is going to be a huge question, because
They have not opened their mouth.
they won't, I guess, because they probably will do whatever they want to do in silence, like how they've been doing. So China is one.
As of now, they are a corporate communist.
Exactly. So they wouldn't be very open about which side they're supporting or what they want to do, if I'm not wrong. They're happy with the place they are in, and they wouldn't jeopardize it. So yes.
Probably they wouldn't risk the enmity of US, but they need the support of
Yeah.
US.
Any more questions?
Yes.